So let's get started with how to facilitate session one of a parent wellness circle. We begin by looking at the facilitator guide. You have hopefully downloaded this now and maybe printed it out, or hopefully can look at it on a device so that you can reference it as we go through the remainder of these tutorials. You have a little familiarity with it from the previous tutorial. And if you remember in that tutorial, we talked about how the first two sections, introducing and exploring, go over some of the key concepts and the theoretical underpinnings for the Parent Wellness Circle program. And some of those key concepts will come up in session one, and we do a deep dive in them here, specifically the Parent Wellness Compass inventory, an overview of the Parent Wellness Compass, and then mapping the next steps of your journey and centering practices. So if you haven't familiarized yourself with these two sections, especially the second section, I would say, then you might want to pause this tutorial and go back and do that, or do it later. But we encourage you to augment what we're going to cover here in this tutorial with the material in these early two sections. And then, as you may remember, in the back of the book, starting on page 43 and then really on 44, is then the individual session-by-session guide for how to facilitate each of the sessions of the Parent Wellness Circle program. So now I'm going to turn to the back and take a closer look at how to facilitate session one as that is outlined in this facilitator guide. So on page 43 in the second half of the facilitator guide is where this starts. 44 gives an overview of the 6 sessions, and also has this little breakout here thing about larger groups, and that will come up at each session. You will see there's a time to break into smaller groups if for some reason you're working with a larger group. We recommend 6 to 10 parents, as you know by now, but sometimes you're called to do it for much bigger groups. So you can do basically the first half of each session in a larger group format, as many parents as you have, and then though for the coaching and discussion parts, we'd like to break into smaller groups. So that's all that means. So let's turn now to page 45. Here we will see the purpose and objectives for session one, which is called Understanding Parent and Family Resilience. And I don't need to read those to you here. You can read them for yourself, but familiarize yourself with those. And then once you've done that, then let's take a look at page 46. And I'm going to take us right now through what we recommend is the first 25 minutes of the session. These are the time blocks over here for a 90-minute session. And then Holly's going to jump in and get to the teaching segment. And so what we have here is really how to open up session one. And now you have your own history, your own skills, your own unique ways of working with groups. Otherwise, you wouldn't be probably looking at a program like this. So again, we can't say enough, make it your own. So these are our ideas, these are our suggestions, these come out of our experiences. But again, you are free to adapt this and make it your own. We know that the most important thing in session one of any group is really forming the group, creating a culture of trust, of safety, of comfort, of welcome. And so the first thing it starts with is literally setting up the space. We always tell you suggestions of things to bring for each session. So you'll see that here. I guess I would also add here, not only do you want to prepare the physical space where you're going to be meeting, which can be almost anywhere. A Parent Wellness Circle is a very portable thing and can meet almost anywhere. Not only do you set up the physical space to be inviting, but you also want to set up and prepare your own emotional space so that you are able to be fully present and welcoming. What do I mean by that? Well, it means certainly not rushing in from 3 other things that you're rushing around to get to the Parent Wellness Circle, and you kind of get there at the same time the parents do, and you're rushing in the door. That's going to be hard to be fully present and centered. Now, that may be exactly what they're doing, and often is the case, but that's because they're the participants, and they are. And then, but if you get there first and are prepared with your own welcoming presence, that will do a lot then to set the tone. I think we set a tone in a group as much by just who we are and how we are present than by what we say. And so here again, make this your own. We like to start with some kind of centering time and journaling, because that just builds that into the opening part of each session that will follow. And it again, without saying, it shows them experientially that this is a group to slow down, to take a look beneath the surface, to listen to our deeper selves, and then to be able to bring that into the circle, into the conversation. People often say, the parents often say, this is my non-Facebook group. This is the opposite of Facebook. I can come here and post my real stories and share my real struggles and challenges, as well as joys, of course, as a parent. So again, that's the kind of space we're creating for them for authentic conversation. And so we do like to ask them, certainly, as they're introducing themselves, to say who the children are in their life that have brought them to be in this parent wellness circle, and a little bit about what they're hoping to get out of it. So that is, again, that's how we set the tone and how we welcome them into a parent wellness circle. And now Holly's going to take a look here at how we do the teaching segment, which focuses on the expectations for participants, the front matter of the participant workbook, the setting the tone, what is a parent wellness circle, some introduction and overview of the parent wellness compass. And to do that, she will start us out in the participant workbook.
So now the parents already have their program workbook, but we haven't really delved into it much. So at this point in the first session of the Parent Wellness Circle, you're going to work through this workbook a little bit, because it helps them understand what a wellness circle is, what's going to be happening, what are the expectations, that kind of thing. So inside the front cover, you'll see that there is a little spot for them to write their name, the date of their Parent Wellness Circle, and there's even a little thing there that says, "Thank you for honoring my privacy, for not reading this. What I have written, it is intended for my reflection only." We want to have a very respectful mood and understanding that everybody is, what they're working on is their own mission and their own passions of what they want to change in their family life, and that this booklet is for their own private reflection. It's a place for them to think, and they don't need to be sharing it with other people. They may if they want, but it's intended for their own reflection. Up in the top corner, you'll see that there's just a little mention of the Samaritan Family Wellness Foundation, which is underwritten by a very generous gift from Ab and Nancy Nicholas here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. You may want to mention that. You may not. It's up to you. Then on the next day, on the right-hand side, you'll see the table of contents. The top part, actually almost the top half, is what you're going to be covering in the first session. All the guidelines and the welcome and expectations are all in that beginning part, and then there's going to be the lesson, and then there's going to follow with the inventory. All that's happening in the first session. And then it goes on to show you what the titles of the other sessions are. And then in the back of the book, which we'll get to in a little bit, is the inventory. So you might just want to orientate them to that. On the left there is something you don't need to go over, but it's just for their reflection. Something that Brene Brown, a very famous writer, has written about parenting, 10 guideposts for engaging parents. If you want to read that and discuss that with them throughout the weeks, some people do like to do that. Then on that page 1, you'll see it's kind of a letter, actually, from Scott and myself, talking about what a parent wellness circle is. And you'll see right in the middle there is a section where it talks about how we always teach our children to stop, look, listen, and proceed when they're crossing a street, for instance. This is what we're offering in this wellness circle, is a chance for parents to stop what they're doing, stop their busy life, come to the wellness circle, relax for a bit, take a look, which they're going to do in the inventory, take a look at their life and how things are going in their family, listen to themselves, listen to the results that they're going to be providing for themselves, and then proceed. So is it okay to cross the street? The child will ask them to look both ways and then go. Then they go. So now the parents, after they get their results from the inventory, are then going to be making next steps. They're going to go. They're going to go out into the world and do something different. So we say it to children: stop, look, listen, proceed. But it's also an important thing for parents to do as well. So you may want to discuss that, or you may just want to have them read that, either between classes, or just mention it briefly. And have them turn to page 2 in their books, and you can see that it is just a welcoming, talking about what a parent wellness circle is. It's a group of parents that get together and share their joys and concerns. It's a safe place for them to be real. One thing it mentions in the 3rd paragraph there, which is really important, is that for parents to have core values and beliefs to guide them. That's why we call this the compass. You have a compass that heads you in a direction. The parents have core values, they have beliefs, they have ideals that should guide them, or probably do guide them, in their role as parents. And that they themselves are like a guide. They are the thing that leads their children. So it's important that they are naming and aware of the core values and beliefs and ideals that guide their life, what they believe are the right things to do. And that those things, to hold on to that as they're living in the life of a family together. So it just talks about that for a little bit. It also talks about how Scott and I have both been family therapists for a long time, and that we know that parents need a lot of support, and they need a lot of chance to talk. And so that this circle is going to be a place like that for them. What is whole person wellness, which is on the right-hand side of the page? The idea is that everything is connected. We have 8 areas of wellness, and they are all interconnected, all, as you'll see here, it says, the great wisdom we have learned from a field of whole person wellness, each of the dimensions is interconnected. Each affects the other. So if a child or a parent is having trouble sleeping, it might be connected to their work, or to stress at home, or that life has lost its meaning. It might have change in their diet that's disturbing them. Maybe there's a loved one that's passed away. So we want them to begin to think about things holistically, rather than just to think I have a problem getting to sleep, or staying asleep, or getting up in the morning, but to think like why that might be, what's going on in the bigger part of my life. It's a very important part of what a parent wellness circle is about. Then you'll flip to page 4, and you want to just go over these things very briefly. You don't want to spend too much time on them, because there's a lot to cover. There's a couple that we want to make sure you do mention, though. That the idea is that where parent wellness circles focus on possibilities, not problems. We are not all coming to air our frustrations with our children or our spouse or whoever. We are going to be looking at what we can do differently. We are going to support one another as we all set our goals. We're going to be working together as a kind of almost as a team, as a support team in the coming weeks. But this also is not a substitute for professional help, nor is it a group therapy or 12-step group. You want to make sure that people realize that. This is just going to last for 6 weeks, and then it's going to be over. They probably will form some nice friendships, but it is not intended to be an ongoing support group. And if people really do need more help, that we would help them find a real support group or something like that for themselves. Then at the bottom, page 4, some quick expectations, asking them obviously to be there on time, honor confidentiality, don't judge one another, be supportive. Nobody should be monopolizing the airtime, or let everybody have their fair share of time to speak, and that everybody is going to be creating next steps and sharing them with the group. So make sure everybody understands that. Then on page 5, just a quick list of the names of the sessions and sort of what they're going to be learning there. You don't have to spend much time with that, but it's just there for their, if they want to read about it. The next on page 6 is an overview of everything that's going to be happening. I wouldn't really spend a lot of time on that either. They will see as you guide them along and just what's going to happen, but that is there for their reference. Then finally, you're going to get to the lesson, which is the lesson for lesson 1. Each session always has a lesson like this. This lesson is called Understanding Parent and Family Resilience. And again, it also mentions the fact that parents need to have a couple of things to be resilient. They need a supportive community around them, which hopefully this wellness circle will be for themselves. They have a clear sense of their spirituality, or as we mentioned earlier, their values and beliefs. Having that is very important. And then making healthy choices based on those values and what they are dreaming of for their family. Those 3 things really help a family be resilient. And so we're hoping that this group will be a nice place for parents to gather and build some resiliency and have some support like that. One thing that we want to also point out to them is that resilient families are not families with no problems. Every family has some problems. I don't care who you are, where you live, whatever. You are going to have problems. That's just what life is like. But families who are resilient will have a community there to support them if times are hard. They will stay clear and stick with their values and that kind of their core beliefs, and they will continue to make choices that are good and healthy for their family. They will still have the same problems everybody else does, but they will be able maybe to bounce back a little bit. Now, I believe Scott is going to talk to you a little bit about the inventory, which is a very fun part of session 1.
Let's jump back now into the facilitator guide and look at pages 46 and 47. Holly just took us through the rest of 46 and the top of 47. And now I'm beginning at about minute 45, about halfway through the session. Now I'm going to describe to you what is the ideal if it can happen. And it's all about time management. You will find that the most challenging part of this program, I think actually facilitating any group, is managing time. And so the ideal in the second half of the session is if you can have them complete the inventory and then introduce them to the mapping the next steps of your journey, which is their homework to be completed but between sessions 1 and session 2. This will all make sense in just a moment. And then actually, sometimes they could even start doing it in session 1. So if you can't do all that, that's kind of what we have in here. When we talk about the inventory, we say that you can introduce it this way, take about 10 minutes to introduce it. You probably don't need that long. And then actually have them start to do the wellness inventory and have them do the first couple sections. Again, if you can have them do the whole thing, that would be the best. So now I'm going to turn to the participant workbook and show you where the inventory is in that, because that's obviously what you're going to be teaching from and getting them into to complete their wellness inventories. So on page 9, we introduced the Parent Wellness Compass Inventory. And the inventory is a guided self-reflection for them, really. I like to use the analogy, if you run a grocery store or any kind of store that has inventory, you take inventory from time to time, right? You want to check what are you in need of ordering more of, and what do you have plenty of in stock. In a sense, that's a metaphor for what they do when they complete their Parent Wellness Compass inventory. We want to present it in a very strength-based way, and that we also can teach this concept here that what we find when we look at the inventory and actually then and when we create our maps and our next steps, that what we pay attention to is what will grow. And so the inventory just simply shows, we also like to use the metaphor of a garden. It shows what areas of the garden are watered and what areas are perhaps a little wilted and in need of some attention and in need of some watering. We want to introduce this in a way that is strength-based, a very present moment. That's the other thing about the inventory, is that it's a very present moment assessment. There's nothing permanent about it. There's nothing diagnostic about it. It's you can think of there are analogies. Healthy organizations take stock of how they're doing in different areas of their focus of their mission on a regular basis, and then that helps them to determine where they want to go. We first have to get a sense of where we are before we can get a sense of where we want to go. So the inventory is in the back of the book, and we'll go there in just a minute, but here we can show them on page 10 and 11. page 10 is some sample statements from 2 of the areas. And then the shaded in compass on page 11 shows them what they are going to end up with when they complete the parent wellness inventory. This is why you bring the crayons, because then they can color in their inventories. And again, everyone is going to have some areas that are well watered, that are fuller, and some areas that are a little in need of some watering. They're not strengths and weaknesses, they're just what we've been paying attention to, because what we will pay attention to is what will grow, and what we don't pay attention to will perhaps be a little bit, a little wilted, as I said. So now let me turn to the back of the book to page 37. This is the actual start of the inventory. This is actually the compass that they will shade in. This is the compass they will shade in on page 37 of their book. And how do they get the information how do they know how to shade it in? Well, that's based on the completion of this inventory. So the 8 areas of the compass are what follow. With the format on the left-hand page is a description that they can read later, not for session 1, but on their own. And then on the right-hand page of each of these sets of 2 pages are the statements that they will scale from 0 to 10, from never to always. And then they just put a number in there. On a scale of 0 to 10, how would you say right now, at this present moment, that you are modeling healthy relationships for your child? I work to help my children recognize relationships that are unhealthy and, when necessary, help them choose other relationships. And then, again, some of this is going to be, if you have a newborn, a parent with a newborn, and that's the only child they have, then that the second one wouldn't really apply. And I like to say, if one doesn't apply, just go ahead and give it a 5. That things to work well. So then they go through each of these statements, and then as they complete the numbers over here, then they will add them up, and they will get a number between 0 and 100, depending on how they scale their 10 statements. Okay, and there's a page for each of the 8 areas. Okay, so then once they do all that and they get those numbers, then they transfer those numbers to this compass. Then they take that number, and that's how they shade in this compass, because the compass goes from 0 to 100, as you can see here. So depending on your score, you shade that in, and that's what gets that shaded in compass that we showed that appears earlier in the book as well. So that's a little bit about how to complete the inventory. Again, I like to put quiet music on. They can, sometimes if they might want to spread out, it's nice to have a table. And again, so they're just doing this on their own, and it's a guided self-reflection to take a moment to just kind of get a sense of where they are right now. So after they had their shaded in compass, something that looks like this on page 11, I like to just do a general, and I think that this is in page 47 of the Facilitator Guide 2, minutes 65 through 70. Just give them a moment to share any initial reactions do they have to taking the inventory. It's not so much as, it's not actually asking them to really share the results. It's to ask them just, what was that process like? Because for some people it can be, especially people who are really struggling or really hard on themselves, it might be a difficult experience. And that we just want to give them a chance to name that. And then so we can reframe that. Good for you that you took it. It sounds like you had some realizations that maybe are upsetting or challenging for you. This is a safe place to talk about that and to again, the focus is now we're going to use this inventory to choose an area of wellness to do something proactive about and positive. So I like to do that. And then you're going to teach them about this mapping the journey. We stay with the navigational theme. You're going to teach them what a next step is, because the whole goal, the coaching process, the whole goal in this program, each session each week is to create a next step. And the next step is just our acronym for similar to a SMART goal. It's needed. It's a sense that as a parent, I feel a need to do this. I've been wanting to do this. It's just right there. It's in my mind. It's been something I want to pay attention to. I just haven't done it yet. I'm excited, meaning that I have positive energy about this. I want to do this. Not I should, or I have to, or other people are telling me I have to. So we want that energy to be, this is their choice. This is not anybody else giving them advice. And then it needs to be time specific. It needs to be manageable, focusable. I don't think that's a word, but you know what I mean? Something they can do this week. Okay? So it can't be something like, I just need to get our family calendar more organized. Okay, that's great. Now, what would that look like as the next step? I'm going to sit down and actually take a look at how we're doing family calendaring and how we're talking about the family calendar. And I am going to talk with my family about creating a common calendar this week. I'm going to have that conversation. That would be a next step. But how do we get to the next step? We stay with the navigational theme. We move from this compass that we just shaded in. Now we create a map for that next step. And this is, you're just going to teach them this because as it says right on here, this is to be completed between sessions 1 and session 2. Although if you're really on time or ahead of time, and you can actually have them start doing this in session 1, otherwise assign it as homework. But you at least want to go over this before they leave in case they have any questions. So the first thing they do is write down 2 or 3 areas of high satisfaction from their parent wellness compass inventory, areas that are well watered, then areas of lower satisfaction. I think we use the garden image right here. And then based on that, what's one area that you want to start with in session 1, at least between session 1 and session 2, was one area you want to address. So everybody, it's this unique combination of individual process within a group setting. They each choose an area of the compass that they want to work on based on their inventory. So several people may choose a similar area, but of course they're going to have completely different things that they want to work on in that area. And then they fill this out. So where are you right now with this area? And so like with the family calendar, if they're working on organization, no one knows what anybody's doing. Every day it's an evening, it's kind of chaotic, and weekends, and we don't realize that, there are things that conflict, and it's very chaotic right now. Where would you like to be? Now we're getting to think forward. This is a coaching program about moving forward. We have to do different to get different. So where do you want to be? I want to create a common calendar, either on paper or a Google Calendar or so electronically. I want us to have much better, be in sync about knowing each other's calendars. That's where I'd like to be. Okay, and then we turn the page, and the next part is, this is a part of, we bring in, again, every group's are different and every individual is different. Some like to have an inspiring quote, and that comes to them very easy, something that will just keep them focused and kind of inspire them. It could be it could come from any source, obviously. And then some kind of a centering practice, something that maybe will help them, each day. This is called like a trigger to help remind them of the habit that they're working on. It just gives them a chance to kind of slow down. It's mindfulness, and then remember what their next step is, what they're focusing on changing. Because whatever we pay attention to is what will grow. Will they need support from others? In this case, the parent would need to have conversation with the family members to talk about that. Previous successes, challenges that they may face as they do this. And then they fill in, again, kind of their longer term goal, which is more the kind of the wish you were here. I want our family to be I want our schedules to be more known to each other, and I want us to plan ahead better, and maybe even have some times where we plan as a family once a week or certainly once a month, whatever it is for them. It's their goal. Remember, motivational interviewing, this is all their initiative. They are setting the area, choosing the area we want us. They're setting the goal within that area, and then they're going to choose their next step, something they can do this week to move them closer to that goal. And so that's their map. And then they fill that out between session 1 and session 2. Again, they may be able to get started. And then more importantly, and then you kind of encourage them, the earlier you get this done, then you can actually get to work on your next step. Okay? Because we're going to be gathering next week to come back and check in on how our next steps went. And that's going to become the format going forward. We will set next steps for the week. We will go out and work on them, and then we will come back and let each other know how they went. That's the accountability. Okay, so what we've just done, this form has just done, and you've helped them do, is take an idea that's maybe just out of their consciousness or been bouncing around in their head for some area of their own wellness or family wellness that they want to address. Begin to break it down into something more specific, seek the support, the inspiration, create the space for this to happen, and then speak it out loud. Write it down and then speak it out loud. There's such a much greater chance of it actually happening then when all those steps are followed. So that's the bulk of the remainder of session 1, and then you want to do some kind of a close, and that's really just reminding them again of what their homework is. I mean, if you have time, you can do some kind of check in at the end. What's one thing you're going to take away from this conversation tonight? Anything from the lesson you want to go back to? You might even I've often ended with that because I've introduced that thought. Just closing thoughts. What does it mean to you, this idea that whatever we paid attention to is what will grow? And then send them forth with some kind of, positive, thanking them for being here, really genuinely admiring and appreciating their vulnerability, their willingness to stop, look, and listen, and take an honest look at really is what probably is one of the most important and yet also vulnerable parts of their lives, and that's who they are as a parent. And so just thanking them for their trust. And then it's important to send out some kind of an email or a text to if it's an email, then you can actually kind of remind them what their homework is and again, thank them for being there, reminding them what the next session is. And then sometimes I like to do 2 emails, one as a wrap up the next day, and then another email the day before the next meeting, just to remind them all that you're coming back together. So that is session 1. This, not only is there a lot to cover in session 1, but that's why this tutorial is longer. But it's once you get this, it really follows. And the booklet is all there. The facilitator guide and the participant workbook really guides you right through it. And by now, you will have a really, the group is really beginning to form. We'll conclude with a short whiteboard video which summarizes much of what we've learned here in this tutorial for how to facilitate session 1 of A Parent Wellness Circle, and then we'll be on to the tutorial for how to facilitate session 2.